always keep this out in our resource library. And I'm pretty sure in this training, I show you where the resource library is so you can go out there. You don't have to have login access to go to the resource library, but we keep everything out there. So if you didn't get them, those slides will stay out there indefinitely. I mean, we really never take them down. We only take them down to update them, but I turn around and put them right back up. So this is our second time. So we do this every year, this training in September, but this year we did it August, September, and October, where it's a full day. And our consultants, we do it by Zoom. And then our consultants do a full day training. So what we've done in November, and next year will probably be October, it's the same training, it's just we break it up into two. We do an admin and purchasing, which is like procurement in the morning, and then we have our meal patterns in the afternoon. What works out great about this is we seem to get a lot more participation for those that need it, because even when we're doing the full day, it was really hard. People would be like, so what, my cook needs to come, but what time are you doing the meal patterns? It's like, oh, I don't know. So this way, it just makes it a lot easier. That way people can come to more of a specific type training, and it's smaller. After this training today, it will be put up in OSDE Connect, so it will be self-paced. If you do the self-paced, or if you have somebody that wants to do self-paced, they will receive their certificate at the end. We don't send out certificates in CACFP. It does show up in the application and agreement. Once you log in, sign up in the training calendar and register. Your registration is down there. And then once you attend, it has a check mark. Eventually, we want it to have your name on it. And then we would also love it if you could click on it and then it show us a certificate. So they're working towards that. I knew that they were making some changes. I don't think that got changed in the last update. We had some things that broke. So they were fixing that. If you've gone out to any, especially on the CACFP side, if you went out there to look for documents, they were not there. They were there, we just couldn't see them. So they did fix that. So now all of our documents are ready. You can see them. It was all of our documents that were in Excel or Word, and it was where it's like a Word document, and it was .docx. If it had the X after it, it wouldn't read it, because they put us up on the cloud or something. They had to move everything to the cloud. I don't know. All I know is it completely ruined our resource library, but everything is back up. It was always there. It's just, it wasn't visible to anybody, but now everything's visible. Everything should be working. And we keep tons of documents out there. I always suggest for everybody to go out there and take a look, because there may be things you don't realize that you need. We have the manuals out there, but we have 5 times the things that are in the manual out there, or it's done individually. So it's a really good place to go. And I will show you how to get out there and go see that. So we are going over the CACFP meal patterns. Now we do have 3 manuals. We went from 1 manual last year. We now have 3. We have the center training manual. We have at risk and adult day. So you're going to see page numbers show up. And if it has like page 4, then that's the center manual. If it says A-6, that's our at risk, and anything AD is our adult daycare. Now I am going to ask a poll because I am curious to know who my audience is today and how long you've been on. So it just gives me an idea of like what I need to cover. It just also lets me know like some things I won't have to talk about if it doesn't pertain to you. Because like the adult daycare side, they do have a little bit more, they have a little bit different family daycare home as well, even without risk. So it just gives me a good idea of who I have on. So I do have an adult daycare on today. I just don't want some of you getting confused. But I'm going to give this just a couple more minutes or a couple more seconds, and then I will show you who all we have on today. We have a really good group. I probably need to add one more. If you are a Head Start, you would go under daycare. But I do need to add that to this because I've had a lot of people. Okay. So we do have a little bit of everybody on today, which is good. And we have some at-risk daycare, and then adults, and then how long have you been doing this? If you're new, 1 to 3 years, we have it all the way through. So that's great. So that gives me a good idea of what I can talk about today. So we will be looking at all the manuals so that if you do have the manual, it is, again, these are the page numbers it's on. Each of these manuals, if you do not have a copy, we did mail them. If you are brand new, you may not have gotten one yet. So if you have not gotten a manual yet, you will get one once you come onto the program, once your application is approved and your program specialist comes out. But we do have them out in the resource library. And again, you can go out there. It's a PDF. You can download it. You can print it. If you need more, you can print more. It's however you choose to do it. Now, something else, you see program specialists on here. We have some people that have been on that are not new. And so I was in the field for 10.5 years before I came into the office, and we've been doing there have been some changes in the agency, and we referred to this program specialist as consultants, but their official title was either like an admin. I was always an admin coordinator, but at one point they were called like a coordinator too, but that's not really what they do. So they're changing a lot of names to be what people do, because it is confusing if I was to say contact your coordinator or your administrative coordinator, like I don't know what you're talking about. But we're not really consultants either. Consultants, you usually pay a fee to come out and help you, which this is our job to help you. So it has changed. We no longer have consultants. We now have child nutrition program specialists. We'll probably refer to them as specialists a lot, but I will slip up. I'm going to say consultant. Like I said, I've been here for 13.5 years, and my job for 10 years was a consultant. So we're now referring to them as program specialists. So the program specialist, if you would like them to come out and do what we call technical assistance. So what technical assistance is if you ever have any questions and be like, hey, I'm not sure if I'm doing my paperwork right, they're the ones that do the review. They're the ones that are going to look at the information that I tell you about today. So you can contact them. Their information is again in the manual. It has their email address, and it also has their cell phone, and it is a work cell phone, so you can't text them. I would tell my people, for me especially, I responded faster to text and email, just because like if I was at a daycare center and they got up for a minute, I was quickly able while they were gone to look at my text or emails and reply much faster than by phone. I will also state, just so, and I'm sure you guys understand this, but COVID is back up again. So they are allowing at our office the last 2 weeks, and I think it's going to go on for a while. I can already tell you, if people want to telework, they can. People are starting to drop like flies in our office as well. So just an FYI, if you do try contacting, like I said, I'm out the office today. Who knows, tomorrow I could decide to stay home because of COVID. It's just really ramped up right now, or if I get exposed. So we're all doing the best we can. A lot of us are here. A lot of people are working. Some people are waiting for test results. Some people do have them, but they're still working. So just kind of an FYI, it's kind of a weird time right now with the fact that COVID is so rampant. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I'm not for sure about the field staff. I think it's kind of the same with them. They don't report to me, so I don't know, but I'm just letting you know that if you try contacting even the office, like a lot of us, even if we're at home, we're trying to work if we're filling up to it, if we don't have COVID. And so, like I said, some people are just working from home because of COVID. They just feel more comfortable and they're allowing that. So just be a little bit patient. If you call, you may have to leave a message and they call you back, but I just kind of wanted to give you the heads up of what's going on here. You can call the state office, but you can also email anybody. Now the office phone number here, if you're not for sure what the difference is, so a program specialist is the one that does come out to do the review. The things I'm talking about today is all the stuff the program specialist knows. They know the manual very well. Here in the state office, it's the back end. So like they're the ones that are handling your application, your claims, any of that kind of stuff. So that kind of gives you a little bit of difference of what the office staff does. And it's for both schools and for daycares. Is the office really handles like your application, your claims, any other documentation that we might need. And then your program specialist is the one that does the reviews, and they're the ones that come out and they know the manual really well. But you can email anybody at the State Department of Education if you know our first name dot last name. Again, you can Google a lot of us. You can just type in even child nutrition in Oklahoma, and I think it will pull up a webpage for all of us here. My name, I'm Kendra Mervelt. I am the Director of Training. You can see my little video in the corner. We do, and and I know we have some schools, I didn't mention it this morning, but we do have some schools on here. I know Dana Parker just left. She went back to McAllister to be a food service director, and we have hired in her position, and it is Becky Gray. So this was all took place last year. They haven't really announced, I mean, it's announced to our staff, of course, and she's in the position now, but Monday was her first day. But just kind of FYI, I'm sure they're going to make an announcement soon when it comes down to like the COVID calls and stuff that they do for the school side. Okay, let me see here. So just kind of a reminder, so you guys may not realize this, especially if you're more on the meal pattern side, on the cook side, but we do all of our reviews unannounced. We on the CACFP side, when we come out, you don't know when we're coming out. We do reviews we cannot go past 3 years for reviews. So we can review in CACFP. It's usually every 2 to 3 years, but sometimes if we review and your review for CACFP doesn't go very well, we call what's called seriously deficient. It means there's a lot of errors in that review, then we will come out the next year. We do have a copy of the notification letter. It is in each of the manuals. Now, we do not have an index in the manuals because we just didn't have time, but we do have a more in-depth table of contents. So you can go out to the notification in each of the books, and it's very specific to adult daycare, what we need, to at risk, what we need. That's one reason of splitting it, is so we could be more specific of what we need in each of those manuals. Now, when we do come out, records must be readily available at all times. So if you are not the one that's going to be there, someone needs to know where the records are. Now, we do suggest that you contact your program specialist if you know you're going to be out. Like maybe you're planning a vacation for a week in July or something like that. That's fine, but we don't purposely come out if we know that you're not going to be there. But if you tell us that you're there, we're really going to work with that. But if we don't know you're not there, we may show up. So someone does need to know where the records are so we can get them so we can do the review. Now, this right here, this is the website that you go to get to the resource library. It's also where the application and agreement is. It's where the training calendar is and claims. Several of these things on the left-hand side, you do have to log in to have access. The most important thing for so many people is the resource library. You do not have to log in to have access to the resource library. This is where you'll find our manuals. We have the food buying guide. We keep our slides, our handouts. Everything that we're talking about can be found out there. We have certain, we call them interactive forms that are on Excel that you can type into, and they're under worksheets in that resource library. If you copy and paste that website, this is what it looks like. And I would suggest you do it and make it your favorites. And then you can click on the resource library, which is right here on the side. And this is just a small stint of what it does look like. We have a lot of sections. We really cleaned this up a lot last year. So we have tons of sections. We have at risk, adult, we have center forms, we have our interactives, we have a training information or training and workshops, we have slides and handouts. We have multi-sided procurement. We have mostly anything you need. Try and look at the heading. We tried to make a heading for it. We're trying, I don't think it's up yet, but we will be having a heading. We have it now on our school side, but we're having one for Spanish. So anything that we have that can be found in Spanish, anything, it's going to go under that section. So if we have it in Spanish, it will go under that section. So it's going to be a little bit of everything, but it is something we're working on. And also Sherry is working on links to go to, I think it's Team Nutrition, where how you can go and get, like, it may be one page, you click on it and it has like 5 links of where you can go to get certain documents that are in English, or even PowerPoint presentations that are in Spanish. So it's going to be really neat. It was supposed to be up last month. I don't think it's up yet, but again, we've had some issues with our system. So I'll go back out this week and look. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with meal patterns. Now, if you want the manual, or if you have a copy of your training manual, this is the page it's going to start on. So 135 for our regular daycare centers. It's going to be on A103 for our at-risk and page AD125 for our adult daycare. So if you want to follow along in that book, you can. We're going to be going over the meal patterns section. Like I said, it's good to know who my audience is, because I will be talking about everybody. Like it's not just for daycare centers. I really will touch on what everybody can do. And a lot of it, the only thing that's really different is for adult days. Really the at-risk and the regular daycare is going to have the same meal patterns, along with if we had any family daycare homes. So when it comes to the meal patterns, we have breakfast, lunch, supper. Lunch and supper use the exact same meal pattern, and then we have snacks. And again, any snack that you serve, it all uses the exact same meal pattern. You must follow the meal patterns for each meal service, whatever meal service you're doing. If you're doing a lunch, you have to follow the meal pattern for that. If you're doing a PM snack, you would do snacks. There are 5 components in CACFP, and we will talk about each of them. You must offer the minimum size as required to be a reimbursable meal. And just a reminder that every year the center does have to do training on meal patterns. So I know you're coming to this training, but it is also required that someone at your office also does meal pattern training, but it's probably not going to be 3 hours like mine is, or 2.5 like this one is right here. So we're going to talk about each of these age groups. We will talk about infants. If I have people that have infants, we're going to talk about 1 to 2 year olds, 3 to 5, 6 to 12, 13 through 18, which is at risk. And then we have our adults. When I talk about adults, I'm talking about our adult daycares, which we do have some on. So I do want to mention, so at risk is really for any age. So we're talking like it can be from 5 to 6 on up to 18, but we do have school districts that participate in at risk. So a lot of their kids might run into the 13 to 18 year olds. 13 to 18, you can't have 13-year-olds except if they're disabled at your daycare center. So that's why we have this, what we call it at risk, because it's just when people are like, you can have 18-year-olds, you can't have them at your daycare, except again, if they're disabled. I understand that, but a lot of you won't. So we just want you to know that 13 through 18 is the at-risk program. Also with infants, I will touch on infants today, but I do an infant training and it's about an hour. It can sometimes be an hour and a half if I have a lot of people or if people ask questions. It's a great one for your teachers. The reason we made it more in depth, but we also did this training because, like I said, a lot of people that deal with infants, it's the teacher in the teacher, it's the teacher in the infant room. So I do suggest we do an infant training every 2 months, every other month. So you may look for that if you are interested or want your teachers to come and attend that, or if you want to come in and do a more in-depth of infants, because there's actually quite more to infants than what meets the eye. So there is something in CACFP that we have, it's called a 1-month transition period. So when you do have an infant, so once they turn 1 year of age, they'll then start eating the 1 to 2 meal pattern. Now, USDA does allow for 30 days, a 1-month transition period for them from the time that they're 12 months to 13 months. So you might have an infant that's still on formula, because formula is not allowed once they get older. I'm going to go ahead and start and say this now. So I'm going to tell you what the CACFP rules are. Now, if you have a situation, which you could be that is different, if you have a situation, something different than what I'm telling you, then you have to have a doctor's note. So if you have an infant who is 14 months old and still doing infant formula, then you would need a doctor's note. So I just want to preface that with anything that I'm saying, because it's going to happen. Every center is going to have the one thing that, oh, we're not supposed to do that because it's not the rules. But if you have a doctor's note, you do what the doctor's note states. And like this slide right here, it has a little box at the bottom. It says P-206. That is page 206, and it's only going to be in our center manual because our at-risk and our adult daycare does not talk about infants, and it's number 8. It's a Q&A. So just that kind of shows you when you see the blue box where you can go to find that information. So let's talk a little bit about breakfast. So breakfast, there are 3 components at breakfast. We have the milk component, we have fruit, vegetable, or both, and then we have a grain. Now, with CACFP, if you are doing CACFP, you are allowed to substitute the grain for a meat up to 3 times a week. You don't have to, but you can. it's not allowed at schools, but it is allowed for CACFP that you can substitute. Now, honestly, a lot of times what I will see is maybe you do eggs and toast, and you can do both. You can always serve more food, but you can't serve less on our program. You can always serve more. So we've seen a lot of people are like, no, I want to serve eggs and toast. And you can serve both. But if you want to not do toast and just do eggs, that's also permissible for CACFP for breakfast up to 3 times per week. Now, this is the breakfast meal pattern for CACFP. As you can see here, it is broken up into 1 to 2s, 3 to 5s, 6 to 12, and 6 to 18 are at risk. Like for fluid milk, you have to have 4 ounces of fluid milk for the 1 to 2-year-olds, 6 ounces of milk for 3 to 5. And for 6 to 12, you have 1 cup or 8 fluid ounces, and it goes all the way up to at risk. If you do a breakfast, you do have to serve at least 1/4 of a cup of fruit, vegetable, or both. You need at least 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable or both for the 3 to 5s, and then all the way up. And then last but not least is the grain. And you can do 1/2 ounce equivalent of grain for those that are 1 to 2, 3 to 5. And then you need at least 1 ounce grain equivalent for those that are 6 and up. Now, I will be honest, a lot of times the milk isn't going to fluctuate much at all with any of the meal patterns. And really the grains stay the same throughout the meal patterns as well. It doesn't matter what meal pattern. The meat will change, and then the fruits and vegetables. So those are the 2 to really watch when you change from breakfast to lunch to snack. Now we have grain right here, but it also, and it does this with all the meal patterns. Down here, it does say like, if you want to do bread, this is a muffin, this is pasta. It does tell you how you can serve it based on what you are serving. So it's also a great tool to look at the meal pattern. This form right here, again, is in the manual. I don't have the number on it, but you can definitely go to the manual and find the breakfast meal pattern. Now, for my adult daycares that are on here, I will tell you, so this is highlighted, the ounce equivalent. It is new of this year. We will be talking about it a little bit later of what that is and what that means. But for our adult daycares, they are required to have 1 cup of milk. They are required to have 1/2 cup of fruit and or vegetable or both. And then their grain is 2 ounces of grain equivalent per day. But again, you can also substitute a full grain for a meat alternate. And again, it just tells them how to serve some of this out. And I always do, all of our meal patterns do have a footnote. It will have like the little numbers right up here. So I do suggest you go down and look at the footnotes when you are looking at the meal patterns. So next we have is lunch and or supper. If you serve lunch or if you just serve supper, we have some that do that. There are 5 components that are required. You have to have a milk, a vegetable, a fruit, a grain, a meat alternate. You are required to serve all 5 of these items at lunch or supper only for CACFP. You cannot do this if you're a school, but for CACFP, you are allowed to substitute the vegetable or the fruit in place of a vegetable. So it's something different. Like schools always used to do this. They would serve 2 veggies at lunch, but and daycares always serve a fruit and vegetable. But then they changed it to where schools cannot do that, but a daycare can serve 2 vegetables instead of a fruit and a vegetable. I will go ahead and say too, when it comes, because I see it on both sides. When I first started, the meal patterns were the exact same for schools and for daycares. And I have in the past, I've had complaints from a daycare about a school because of what they're serving. So things have changed. Schools are different. Things that CACFP they can't do, they can do at schools. Schools, we mostly watch sodium. With daycares, it's sugar. So that's why there's some of these different rules now. So before you complain and be like, well, my child went to school and had a donut, but I can't serve a donut on CACFP. That is correct. A school can serve a donut. But when you do CACFP meal patterns, you cannot. It is not permissible. It's not allowed. So just kind of a little bit, just an FYI, your meal patterns are definitely different from each other now. This is the meal pattern for lunch or supper. This is part of the meal pattern, but you have the milk. Again, you have 4, 6, and 8 fluid ounces. For your meat alternate, for those that are 1 to 2, they have to have 1 ounce. For 3 to 5, they have to have 1.5 ounces. For 6 and older, they have to have 2 ounces. Now, if you are serving like a meat alternate, this is a good, it tells you right here how to serve it. We have what's called the food buying guide, and I'll talk about the food buying guide a little bit today. We also do a 1-hour training on the food buying guide. Again, we're doing it every other month. So the month that I do a training on infants will not be a month I do a training on the food buying guide. The next food buying guide training is in February. It's the first week of February. So like right here, if you want to do cooked beans, it's telling you if they're 1 to 2 years old, you need to give them a fourth of a cup. If they are 3 to 5, you give them 3/8 a cup. And that's if you are counting their bean as a meat alternate. It also says how much you're supposed to give them if it's peanut butter, etc. So this is, again, a really good tool to use. Now we have the vegetable, 1/8 of a cup, 1/4 of a cup, and 1/2 a cup. And then for fruit, it's 1/8 of a cup and 1/4 of a cup all the way across. They want them to have much more veggie than they do fruit. Again, it's all about the sugar. And then again, we have the grains, and the grains does stay the same. It stays the same throughout all the meal patterns. Is you have a 1/2 ounce equivalent for those up to age 5. And then after that, we have ages 6 to 12. So Sherry, again, did send out some handouts, and the handouts, you can go through them. There's a long list. I will talk about some of the handouts, about what you have in there. Let me pull it up real quick. So I'm just going to kind of give you a brief of what is in the handout. So if you want to go, I do have the meal patterns out there for both CACFP and infants. So you can just print that out if you choose to. We also have, I have some information about cooking for kids, which I'll talk about later on. We also have stuff, I'll talk about the grain ounce equivalent that is highlighted there. A little bit about inventory. We have a new grains chart that came about this year for CACFP. And then there's another thing called serving vegetables. It's just a neat little flyer that we got from Team Nutrition. It is all the stuff, again, is in the resource library. And all of that stuff is also it's mostly in the meal pattern section. So if you don't want to have to look at, if you didn't get the handouts, you can just go to the meal pattern section and you will be good to go to see all of that. So now let's talk about our adults. So our adults, again, they have to have the same 5 components, but how much do they have to have? So with the fluid milk, again, they have to have a cup. The meat alternate is 2 ounces. And again, here it shows if you want to serve like dry beans, how much you need to give them, yogurt, etc. to meet that requirement. Vegetable is 1/2 a cup. Fruit is 1/2 a cup. And then we have grains. And again, they need 2 ounces of grain equivalent each day. And again, this is for adult daycares. It's not your adults that at your daycare center or at risk. This is an actual adult daycare program. I love visiting these adult daycares. I've missed them a lot. They're neat. They're neat little things. I hope one day I get to go to an adult daycare and be a participant, because get my hair done, play some cards, eat lunch, should be fabulous. So last but not least is we have snacks. You are required to serve 2 components each day. You choose the components every day. It can be something different, but you have the 5 components: milk, grain, meat alternate, fruit, and vegetable. But you choose which 2, and you have to make sure that you serve them in the correct size. Now, I used to give this example. It's kind of a really bad example now because you can't do any sweets, but as long you can serve more components as long as 2 of them are in the required size, serving size. So before, I would give the example about like strawberry shortcake. Maybe you serve a strawberry shortcake with strawberries and then you did milk with it. You could have it to where the strawberries did not meet the requirement. So like right here for snack, they have to have either 1/2 a cup or 3/4 a cup. Maybe you gave them 1/4 of a cup. So it'd be less than the 1/2 a cup. But then you gave them the milk in the required amount. And then at the time when you could serve something sweet, you could have had the pound cake. But maybe you do instead of like a strawberry shortcake, but you had like strawberries and juice, and together it equals. And you can do that. People don't really think of that. Schools are very inventive about doing stuff like that. Just because you serve one thing, as long as the total of what you're serving meets the requirements, you can serve it. So a good example that schools do for their older kids, because they have to have, if you look here, this is a snack, but say at lunch, they have to have 2 ounces of meat alternate, and they want to do peanut butter sandwich. Well, a peanut butter, you need 2 tablespoons to equal 1 ounce. So what they would do is they would do the 2 tablespoons of peanut butter equal 1 ounce, and then also give a string cheese with it. So as long as your total amount equals, so if you did strawberries and juice, as long as the total amount is 3/4 cup or a half a cup, depending on the age, you're fine. You can put things together. It doesn't have to be just one item. You can put things together to make it, as long as, like I said, as long as it's all a vegetable, then as long as it meets the requirements. So on here for snack, if you have a vegetable, you need either a half a cup or 3/4 a cup. Well, maybe you chose to do like carrot and broccoli sticks, or carrots and celery sticks and peanut butter. So you could do them both, but as long as it's the half a cup and 3/4 a cup, and then either the half ounce for the meat or the 1 ounce for the meat, you would be fine. So I think what gets hard with CACFP is a lot of times people don't think a little bit outside of the box. And you definitely can do that. As long as these components are offered or they're given at lunch, breakfast, or snack, we don't care what it is. Like if you choose at breakfast to give a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at breakfast, if you have the meat, or actually you don't need a meat, but if you have the grain, then milk, and then you could serve a juice or fruit with it. So it's really up to you, but you can think outside the box with all of these, because that's, I think, where a lot of people get hung up, especially at snack, is people want snack ideas. So think about outside the box, and I can give some here in a little bit. And I'll talk about cooking for kids going on as well. They're going to be a great resource, especially for a lot of our daycare centers. So when it comes to snack for our adults, we have the fluid milk again for 8 ounces. The meat alternate is 1 ounce. The vegetable is a half a cup. The fruit is a half a cup. And then they go down to 1 ounce equivalent of grain at snack. Now, one thing, again, to make sure you guys are aware of is the fruit and vegetable go way up at snack. So just make sure if you're doing a snack, I always kind of suggest, if you want to do juice, to do it at snack time, because it does require more than at any of the other meals. So you don't have to, it's just a suggestion. So we went through the meal patterns of how much you're supposed to serve. So now let's go through each component to talk a little bit more about like what the do's and don'ts are of the components and what they are. What does it mean? So when I talk about like fluid milk, what do I mean about fluid milk? Well, fluid milk is milk that comes from a cow. That's what we consider fluid milk. We have a component called the milk component. It's not a dairy, it's milk. So what we require for CACFP, if you have to serve milk with every breakfast, and you have to serve milk with every lunch. It's not always required at snack. It's if you choose to serve it at snack. But if you have a child that is 1 year of age, they are required to have unflavored, which is white whole milk. When they get to 2 to 5, they have to have white, fat-free, or low-fat milk, which is skim or 1%. Then once they get 6 and older, they can have white, fat-free, and skim milk, or at that point, you are allowed to do a flavored, fat-free, or skim milk once they get older. And then for infants, they are not allowed to have milk. Infants can only have iron-fortified formula or breast milk. Okay. We talk about these transitions. So we have a transition from an infant going to 1, but we also have a transition period for 1-year-olds when they go to 2. So they have whole milk when they're 1, but once they become 2 years of age, they have to have lower fat content in their milk. And it may be a little bit hard for them. So again, USDA does allow for a 30-day period from 24 months to 25 months to where you can give them whole milk still. They suggest that you do half and half. So maybe you do half whole milk, half 1%, or half whole milk, half skim milk, just to get them to ease them into drinking the lower fat content of milk. Now, again, you may have some kids that are 2, 3, 4 years old, and the parents are wanting them to have whole milk. Now, maybe it's required because the doctor wants it, because maybe they're low in weight. So as long as you have a doctor's note, you can do whatever that doctor's note states. So, and that's with this whole meal pattern requirement. If you have a doctor's note, you do whatever that doctor's note state, and you're still in compliance as long as you're following the doctor's note. Well, there is something else when it comes to breast milk. So as we mentioned before, infants cannot have milk. They can only have infant formula or breast milk. Well, USDA does allow any child at any age to have breast milk. So if you have like a 2-year-old and the parent still wants them to have breast milk, that is fine. If a parent is allowed to come on site and breastfeed, that is perfectly fine. But if a parent gives you the expressed milk, then you do still have to meet the requirements of the serving size amount. So if you have a mom that gives you, say, 1/4 of a cup of express milk, like actually, let's say they give you a 1/2 a cup total, and you need 1/4 of a cup for lunch and 1/4 of a cup for breakfast. Well, a 1-year-old is required to have at least 1/2 a cup serving of milk. So you can give them the 1/4 a cup at breakfast and the 1/4 a cup at lunch, but you have to supplement with the whole milk to get that full 1/2 cup serving size. But you are allowed to serve breast milk at any age. There's no limit on breast milk. So it can be 5 years of age, which is fine. So this is only for adult daycare. So everybody else can go blah, 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 blah. But from our adult daycares only, up to 1 time a day, you can replace milk and serve yogurt instead. You have to serve at least 6 ounces, which is 3/4 of a cup of yogurt. But again, you can serve that in place of milk up to 1 time per day. There are sugar requirements, which the sugar requirements for yogurt we're going to talk about later, and it's for everybody on CACFP. It's not just for adults. But again, it credits for only 1 food component. So we usually talk about yogurt being a meat alternate. But again, you can use yogurt as a meat alternate, or you can use it as a milk. But you have to tell us which one. It can't be for both. You can't say that I'm doing yogurt and it's my meat and my milk. It can't be that way. So again, 1 time per day, you can substitute a yogurt for milk instead. So maybe at breakfast, you decide to serve a yogurt instead of milk to your citizens, and they use that as a milk replacement. So milk substitutions, we do have what we call a milk substitution. It is allowed for the center to do this. So I'm going to explain more about what the milk substitution is, but when I talk about milk and we talk about what is allowable is cow's milk. We've had a lot of confusion on this, but lactose-free milk. So say you have a child that's lactose intolerant. You can buy lactose-free milk. Lactose-free milk comes from a cow. So you do not have to have any doctor's note. It's not a milk substitute. It is cow's milk. So you can buy lactose-free milk. Just make sure it's in the correct fat content. You don't need any other documentation. But what the milk substitute is if you are wanting to serve something that is not comes from a cow, it has to meet certain requirements. Now, the institution, I will say, most of the time when I see this at a school or a daycare, it's usually because of an allergy. So you can definitely serve it for that reason. Without having to get an actual doctor's note, a parent can sign this, and I'm going to explain why a parent is allowed to do it. But with the milk substitution, what it really says, like a lot of you will do it just for their kids with an allergy. But really what you can do with this milk substitution is you tell the whole center, like everybody, hey, I offer a soy milk and I offer a cow's milk. You tell me what your kid wants and they can have either or. But they do still want something in writing. But again, it's just offered to everybody, where a lot of times when I see someone doing the milk substitution, it's really just because of an allergy issue. But a parent can request. And the reason why a parent can request is because the reasons that they can have the substitute can be not just for allergies. It can be for religious reasons. It can be for lifestyle reasons, and not just the allergies. Because the thing is say I am allergic to beef, which that'd be the worst thing I could ever be allergic to. I love red meat. But if I was allergic to beef, I could have chicken. I could have eggs. I could have cheese. There's a lot of other things that I can have in replacement with that. When we talk about milk, milk comes from a cow. So you do again need, but the parent can sign this. It doesn't have to be by a doctor, but it does have to meet the same nutrient requirements. So what I will tell you, with all the milk substitutes that we have found, they're all only soy. 2 of the main ones that I've seen would be Walmart brand soy milk, and then 8th Continent has the number 8th Continent. Those we have seen meets the requirements. We have not found anything else that meets. There's no almond milk, no oat milk, none of that. If you think you might have found one that meets the requirements, please send it to us first. And we did have someone that they thought that they found a milk. We always tell people first, look at the protein first. That's usually gives it away, the protein. But we did have someone send in an almond milk, and it did have 10 grams of protein. However, the potassium was only at 300 milligrams, not 349 as required. So it did not meet the requirements. But like Silk only has 7. But if you do have a doctor's note and the doctor's note says serve Silk, then you serve Silk milk. You do whatever the doctor's note states. But I will tell you, if you do a milk substitution, the only ones that we're finding are soy. If you have a kid that says no soy, no milk, then you give them whatever you want to give them, whatever the parent wants is fine. Because again, the only milk substitutes that we are aware of are soy products. And as I mentioned before about the milk substitution and about medical statements, again, and it's really with anything that we're talking about, if a child needs something that is not required, so in this case, say they need a non-dairy beverage, but it's not nutritionally equivalent, it doesn't meet those nutrient requirements, for instance, almond milk or coconut milk, and I know oat milk is becoming popular, then you have to have a doctor's note, because there is none of those that we have found meet the requirements per USDA to be equally nutrition to cow's milk. And again, as I mentioned before with the medical statement, it is required for anybody who cannot consume certain foods. It does need to be from a recognized medical authority. It should also recommend alternative foods, which it usually doesn't, but sometimes it does. Now, you don't have to have necessarily a note. So say you're allergic to strawberries, but you can give them oranges if it's not if it's a non-medical, which to be honest with you, medical now is everything. If you get a stomach ache, if I get breakout in hives, that's all considered medical or a disability. So, but my thing to you is I would definitely try to get a doctor's note because it just protects you. And with COVID, I mean, like today, our office, we are missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 5 people today. And yesterday we had 4 people gone. No, we're up to 6 now. And we have a very small office. We have like 12 people up here, maybe. So my thing is with COVID, especially because it's ramping up again, maybe the cook is out, the director is out on a bus run, someone's getting snacks ready, but they don't know that because Susie is not in their class, that Susie's allergic to strawberries. So my thing is get a doctor's note, and that way everybody can see it and have access to it. And that way it's just liability for you. We have no requirements about how often to get a doctor's note. My suggestion would be if you can every year. And the only reason I say that is because especially with young kids, they tend to grow out of allergies. So it's just something to think about. If a parent's like, no, I gave you a note, I'm not going to give you another one. They don't have to. But I would just suggest it because if they do grow out of some allergies, and I don't know if you've heard of too, I have a friend that just did it with their daughter. She found out it was anaphylactic to peanuts and did a training, and she can now have peanuts because it's this new thing where they like expose them constantly to it to where their body no longer has a reaction. They're doing it with a lot of foods. They're doing some very interesting things, I tell you, medically wise. So just again, some stuff to be aware of when you serve milk. This is just some things that we see when we're out in the field. These have been common. Again, I was out there for 10 and a half years. It's still things that we see in the field. Make sure you're purchasing enough because we see that. Make sure you're purchasing the correct cup size, especially for anybody older than 6, because they need 1 cup of fluid ounce. And what we notice is that people, they will buy, and I know it's hard to find styrofoam right now, but if you buy the 8.5 ounce cup, you have to fill it to the very top brim for it to meet requirements. And a lot of people would only do it to that little first lip. So just make sure that you are buying the correct size. Don't expect if you buy an 8 ounce cup that it's going to be great for one to have a 1 cup. And then also make sure that you use a liquid measuring cup and not a dry. If you use a dry, like the one here on the screen that is marked out, you will be an ounce short. I understand it's so much faster to do pour, dump, pour, dump. But I'll tell you right now, you will be short of milk by an ounce if you do it. Because dry and liquid measurement are 2 separate measurements. So So now we finished with milk. Let's talk about the grain component. So something that changed this from last year to this year is we went from what's called 1 serving size to ounce equivalent. Schools have been doing ounce equivalent since 2012, so this is nothing new for them. I did not realize this until after we were doing some trainings. Now we do have an ounce equivalent training. We did it for a full year. We quit doing it in December. It's a 30-minute training. It is still out in OSDE Connect if you would like to go watch that training. 2 or 3 of the handouts I gave you is about ounce equivalent. One is a great little sheet. I'm going to go ahead and let me pull that up for you real quick because I really do love this sheet. We have one about calculating, which I'll be honest, a lot of you are not going to do any calculating. You're just going to look at the grains chart. But this is what it looks like. It can kind of tell you, like, you will need 20 cheese crackers that are 1 inch by 1 inch. If you serve 20 of those, it will give you about 1 ounce equivalent. So it's a great book, a great little sheet. It's 6 pages. It's 3 front and back. But like here, it will tell you if you serve rice. Here's the 1 through 5-year-olds, how much rice that they need. And then how much they need from 6 through 18. And then our adults. It's a great little, again, this is just called it's an ounce equivalent worksheet, and it is located in the resource library and in your handouts. It's a great little quick cheat sheet. So when we talk about ounce equivalent, we're really talking about terminology. We're not saying that now if you wrote down that you had 2 pounds of bread, that you have to write, I'm trying to do math real fast in my head, 16 plus 16, 38, 32. 32 ounces of, you don't have to write things out in ounces, 32 ounces of bread. You can still write that you had 2 pounds. It's just a terminology change. And it's also that they increased it just a little bit. Now, you're not going to notice it a lot when it comes to the meal patterns, except for bread. And this is an issue we have in schools as well. So I'm going to go over it. But before in group B on the bread grains chart, which I'll show you here momentarily, the old way on the 1 serving, it was 25 grams or 0.9 ounces. So now a 1 ounce equivalent equals 28 grams or 1 ounce. So you can tell it went up barely anything, 0.1 ounce, and it went up 3 grams, barely anything. So you're not going to notice a lot when you're serving rice and pasta and crackers. You're not really going to notice it a whole lot. But again, make sure you're using the updated grains chart because it's going to say ounce equivalent on there, not serving. If it says serving, then you're using the wrong grains chart. It is in the handouts that I gave you. Make sure when you print it out, you print it in color. There's also one in your manual. You can rip it out, but make sure it needs to be in color because there's certain things you cannot serve, and I'll show you, and it is in red on that grains chart. And we've had people that have printed it out in black and white, and they served it because they didn't see that it was in red. So again, this is just a small little change, but the big area where you're going to find it is especially if you serve things like toast. And my adult daycares are going to notice it too, because like for instance, at lunch, they have to have 2 ounce equivalent of grain, or at breakfast. And if you're serving 2 ounce equivalent of grain, you have to make sure your bread meets. So an example is this is probably a lot of you were buying and you didn't realize it. Like 1 slice equals 26 grams or 0.9 ounces. This bread, 1 slice is 28 grams. You really need to pay attention to what you're buying. This has been a problem in schools as well. It's been going on for a long time. The thing is like if you buy this bread, you can give a full slice to the younger kids, but the older kids, you need to give them more because sometimes this older bread can be hard to find. What I've had some people do, or even what some schools will do, is maybe you want to do toast and you cut the toast into 4s, and then you give like the older kids 5 squares and give the younger kids 3. Then you would be in compliance. Or maybe you do triangles and you give the older kids 3 triangles, and then you give the younger kids 1 full slice of bread, because they have to have 14 grams. Again, you can always serve more, you just cannot serve less. Now we get this question quite a bit and I'm going to answer it. People are like, well, what brands? Okay, so don't focus on the brands because honestly, like let's just say Sara Lee. Sara Lee, you're going to find both of these. I think it's based a lot on if it's whole wheat or not. I think it's based on how thick the slices are. You're going to find 28 ounce and you're going to find 26 grams of bread for all brands, essentially. But be careful when it comes to bread. Just be careful that you're buying the correct size. So a whole grain. So when it comes to grains, you are required for CACFP to serve at least one serving of whole grain per day. Schools are required for everything that they serve has to be whole grain. Centers, it's only one time per day, and you get to choose the meal. Now, say you are a center or you have at risk and you only serve one meal on at risk, that one meal does have to be whole grain rich. Anytime you serve a whole grain, it has to be, or anytime you serve grains, it has to be either whole grain rich or everything has to be enriched. And we don't have an issue with finding enriched products anymore. We only had that issue for a while when Dollar Tree first came out. But now, as you can tell, like the sizes at Dollar Tree are much smaller. So, but it is all enriched. Now, I will tell you, if you do not serve a whole grain once per day, then we will take back the meal with the lowest reimbursement that day that you did serve a grain. So I have some centers, don't make this hard on yourself if you don't want to. I mean, I have some centers that literally all they do is buy a whole grain piece of bread, and every day for breakfast, it doesn't matter what they give them toast with it. And that way they always know that they met their whole grain. But you can do anything you want. You can do tortillas, you can do pastas, you can do breads, you can do some chips are whole grain, some crackers are whole grain. You get to choose about what you want to do. Now, when it also comes to whole grain, you can also go based on what WIC approves for whole grain. And I'm going to show you what that is. You can also, when you're looking for a whole grain item, as long as the first ingredient says whole, like whole corn, whole wheat, or is a whole grain item, you can serve it. If the second ingredient is the whole grain and the first ingredient is water, you can serve it as a whole grain, or if you have proper documentation. And since I said since schools, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but since schools have been doing ounce equivalent since 2012, all your CN labels and stuff like that is already up to date. You're already good. So maybe you want to make it easy on yourself. Now, again, these are what's WIC approved, but there's also way more at the store that you can purchase. You just have to look at the labels. But if you just type in Oklahoma WIC approved, it will pull up a list. It will be a front and back, and this is the front side. It lists some whole grain options, and it will even tell you, so it gives you the picture, but then down here, it will list everything that matches. So like it says 1 ounce loaves only, like best choice, 100% whole wheat. It will tell you, and it also gives you the UPC code. So if it's on this list, you can serve it as a whole grain. It has bread, and it also has tortillas on there as well. If it's on this list, you can serve it as a whole grain. Now, this is not all inclusive. We have a much larger list in your manual, but these are some things that are considered whole grain. So whole wheat, whole corn, whole durum. Whole corn you'll see like on chips. Or maybe some tortillas. Whole durum is what you'll see a lot for pasta. I found out durum does come from wheat. If you serve quinoa, brown rice, wild rice, or oatmeal, those are automatically whole grain. If it says oatmeal on the label, it's automatically whole grain. If it says brown rice on the label, it's automatically whole grain. So those are some easy ways that you can. There's also a list in the manual about what flours and stuff that you can use as well. So let's do a quick little to see if this item's whole grain or not. So this is a breadstick, and the first ingredient is whole wheat. It does have other things in it, and it appears to be enriched or either whole grain itself. So if we have this product that's whole grain, by looking at the label, if the first ingredient is a whole grain and all the remaining ingredients were either enriched or whole grain, can you serve this product? And the answer is yes. Now, one question that we also get when it comes to CACFP is if you make any of your items from scratch. I'm not talking about using Bisquick. I'm not yet talking about using Bisquick or Shawnee Mills or using any other pouches that you just add like water. If you make stuff homemade, like with flour, a lot of times, like with pancakes, you make them with flour, not using a mix. As long as 50% of the flour in it is whole grain, it is considered a whole grain product. So an example of this is if you make pancakes and say it calls for 2 cups of flour. So 1 cup of flour is whole wheat flour, and then 1 cup of flour is all-purpose flour, then it is considered a whole grain item. And on your menu as served form, all you have to do is tell us you did flour and then tell us how many cups that you had in there, and let us know if there were any that were whole grain. Because like if you've ever made a bit, I don't make a lot of breads, but if you make breads and you only use whole wheat flour, like say you're making a biscuit and you use 100% whole wheat flour, that thing is going to be so dense, it will not rise at all. So that's why USDA allows for 50% of the product to be whole grain and 50% of it to be either all purpose or whatever flour that you use. Now, there are limitations of sugar in CACFP. Breakfast cereals cannot have more than 6 grams of sugar per dry ounce, and this is for cereals that are ready to eat, instant or regular hot. Now, if you do make your own oatmeal, can you add sugar to it? You can. We're just saying be cautious, but when you do buy it, when we look at the labels when you buy, it has to make sure it's under that amount. On grain-based desserts are not creditable, and I'll show you what those are. And then this requirement, all this sugar stuff, it's for everybody on CACFP, including infants. It doesn't matter if you're an infant, an adult. And unfortunately, with the adult daycares, both my grandpas have dementia, and they have very healthy appetites, and their very healthy appetite includes for a lot of sugar. And I was talking to somebody at an adult daycare, and she did mention to me that that's the last taste bud to go. That's the only thing they can taste is sweet. So I really hate that it really does affect the adult daycares as well, because they are the ones, and plus you want them to gain weight, but they're the ones that like the sweets, and they're the ones that really need the sweet items. They did not take everything sweet away. I will say I am kind of impressed with some of the stuff that they did leave on. So as long as it is creditable, you can still serve it, which I'll go over some of these things here in a moment. What most of the people do is, again, on the WIC approved list. Again, type in WIC approved, either whole grain or pit cereal. That front side will have bread and the tortilla, and on the back side it lists all the cereals that are allowable, and this is per WIC. There's more choices available. Like if you want to read labels, there's a lot more stuff. Like I had a center ask me at a training, there's no corn flakes on here and there's no Rice Krispies on here. And they both fall under the sugar requirements, and they can, but this is just what people can spend their WIC dollars on. And so this is allowed. Now, the items that have the most sugar on here that I have seen is like, so multi-grain Cheerios is on here, but Honey Nut Cheerios is not. Honey Nut Cheerios has too much sugar. You can do regular Cheerios. Kix has been popular because of the sugars. You can do Frosted Mini Wheats. Frosted Mini Wheats are on here. And then I personally loved Alphabets, which Alphabets are on here. I saw them. I think they moved it because they changed this list just a little bit. But definitely, like I said, watch your Cheerios, because Honey Nut Cheerios are not allowable, but multi-grain Cheerios are allowable. Now, I'm going to show us here in a little bit how to determine the sugar in the yogurt. And the same principle applies to cereals. So we have a chart, so you can go if there's some cereals that you want to purchase to make sure that they fall into that category. Now, these are just some grain-based desserts that you can serve, or that you cannot serve. I'm sorry, these items cannot be served. And we do have, I'll just kind of pull it up on the screen real fast. So this again is the grains chart, and make sure you print this in color, because anything in red is not allowed to be served for CACFP. We have it on here for a couple of reasons. Is one, so you know what you cannot serve. Two, schools are still allowed to serve these items. So that way they have to have access to know what they can serve as well. Like if a school wants to serve a cookie, they have to know how much they have to serve if they want to serve it. But again, anything in red is not allowed at all to be served for CACFP. It can't be part of the reimbursable meal. Now, you can still do muffins, you can do French toast, you can do waffles, you can do pancakes, but you can't do donuts, cookies, granola bars. You can do granola cereal, but not granola bars. You cannot do cinnamon rolls. You can't do Pop-Tarts, brownies, cake, all of that stuff. That is off limits for CACFP. And again, this just gives you an idea of what cannot be served on CACFP. They can be for schools, but not for CACFP. Those items that I just showed you are considered a grain-based dessert. Again, if it's like, if you look at something and you're like, so this is a real thing. This happened several years ago. We were at the store. One of my old coworkers and I, we would go around to grocery stores a lot of times and actually look at food products all the time. We did it quite a bit. But we saw this thing called a breakfast round. Well, when we went and looked at this breakfast round, it really was an oatmeal raisin cookie. So just because they called it a breakfast round, it was really an oatmeal raisin cookie. So if it does look like a dessert, we're going to consider it a dessert. But if you're not sure, reach out to our office or your program specialist for approval. We've had some people that have changed some of their formulas or their recipes. Like I had one person send a recipe that they use applesauce and no sugar in this recipe. So if you have something like that, send it to your program specialist and let them look at it, because they maybe say, hey, if you're substituting this, I think it would be allowable. We've had some people that have sent us stuff and it's like there's 17 cups of sugar in there and like 1 cup of oatmeal. We're like, clearly this cannot be served. There's way too much sugar in there to be served. Something else, and we do understand a lot of people do have special occasions. I used to have some centers that once a month would do a birthday party and they would have cupcakes and juice, and it would be their snack and they would claim it for reimbursement. But we had a center, I've been using this example for a very long time, but she has been on the program for a very long time, and she did donuts every Friday. And she did not want to stop the tradition. She loved it. The kids loved it. So you have a couple of options if you want to do something like this. Either you can serve the donut and not claim the meal is one. Or what she chose to do is she did for breakfast, she served a yogurt as a meat alternate. She served a fruit and she served a milk, and then she gave them a donut as an extra. You can do that as long as there's it's a reimbursable meal without that item. But however, if you do buy things like donuts or anything like that, that is not allowable, on the receipts, it has to be marked out because it's not it's not allowable to be reimbursed by it's not a reimbursable item with CACFP. It's not allowed, but you can still serve it if you want to do stuff like that. So that's the biggest thing, is all of our grains. So we talk about all the sugar requirements for grains, what cannot be served, and things to watch out for. The next item is meat alternate. So again, you are allowed to serve a maximum of 3 times per week. You can change out the grain for a meat alternate. But something else we do tell people is just make sure that you are serving a variety of items at your center. Like every day you don't want to do hamburger meat. They're going to get tired of it. So make sure, just think about it. Serve cheese, serve bean, you can do tofu, you can do eggs, you can do yogurt, you can do chicken. There's a wide variety. So just make sure that you do use a variety. The only thing is for infants, you cannot serve soy yogurt. You can do soy yogurt to anybody, but not an infant. And I'm not for sure why, because an infant can have soy formula. So I don't know, but it does specifically state that infants are not allowed to have soy yogurt. Now, if you do want to do a meat in place of a grain at breakfast, this is an example of that. You can do, say, a cheese omelet, fruit, and milk. So if you are required to have 1 ounce of grain at breakfast, then you have to serve 1 ounce of meat. If it's a ½ ounce of grain equivalent, then you can serve a ½ ounce of meat at breakfast. So that's just to give you an idea if you do want to substitute it out. Again, we're going to go back to yogurt, because again, yogurt is a meat alternate. Unless you're an adult daycare, then you are allowed to do yogurt in place of milk up to 1 time per day. It has to be a commercial yogurt. You cannot make homemade yogurt. Soy yogurt, again, is a very good dairy-free option. 4 ounces of yogurt served does equal 1 ounce of meat. Yogurt can be a meat alternate. Again, for adult daycares, it can also be a milk. And it cannot have more than 23 grams of sugar per 6 ounces. And this isn't for everybody. It doesn't matter the age. If you're participating in CACFP, the sugar requirement is also the same for yogurt. So I'm going to show you how to do the yogurt. And again, the same principle applies to the cereal. So let's just say the yogurt that I'm looking at, the serving size is 6 ounces. When you come down here to the sugar, it says 19 grams. So, and I'm going to caution you because it is on the screen, but so when you pull that WIC approved list, it does have yogurts on there. Do not use the yogurt list for a lot. I looked at like 3 out of like 6, and 2 of them had way too much sugar. It's only allowed for the cereal, and it's only allowed for the whole grains at this point. WIC may change their list, but the sugars, the WIC yogurts do not meet requirements for CACFP. So we come here to our chart, and this chart is located in your manual. It's also, we have a yogurt and a cereal chart in the meal patterns. It's its own separate flyer, so you can pull that as well. So our yogurt that was 6 ounces, we come down here to 6 ounces, and then we come all the way over, and it says if I serve 6 ounces of yogurt, I can have up to 23 grams of sugar. So that yogurt that we just looked at is fine. We can serve that. Which there's a lot of sugars that meet this requirement. From what I understand, a lot of the Yoplait meet it. USDA has stated, it is in a Q&A, it's in the manual as well, that if you say buy a plain yogurt and then a high sugar yogurt, can you mix them together? And you cannot. To make the sugar go down, it's when you purchase it, it has to be below the sugar requirements. So now let's go on to fruit and vegetable. So fruit and vegetable are now 2 separate components, except for at breakfast. A vegetable can replace the entire fruit component at lunch and supper. And juice, are allowed to still serve juice, but you're only allowed to serve juice up to 1 time per day. You are not allowed to serve juice to an infant. It is no longer permissible to do that. So just kind of an FYI, if you serve juice, make sure it's only 1 time a day and not to an infant unless you have a doctor's note. We no longer accept any donated food. Donated food, if you serve it, it's as an extra, but it cannot be part of the reimbursable meal. I had a church once, and they had a man, he was so sweet. And every time he'd go to Sam's, he'd go buy chips for the kids at the daycare. But they could serve the snacks or serve the chips, but it just had to be an extra. It cannot be as part of a component towards the reimbursable meal. Now, there is one thing, and this is for any age at a center. A parent is allowed to provide 1 creditable component as a part of any reimbursable meal. So, but it's only 1 time, like only 1 component. So like a good example that we see a lot is for the infants. A lot of times it might be the breast milk or formula. A child care provider must supply all the other components. It has to also, again, be creditable. Maybe you have a parent that says, I want my kid to have almond milk. I'm going to bring the almond milk, but that almond milk does not meet CACFP requirements. So therefore, again, that is not a credible component. This is not considered a donation because the parent is not buying it for the whole center. The parent is only buying it for their child or for their children. So just kind of FYI on that. We don't consider if a parent wants to provide 1 component, it's only for their children. Water must be offered and made available throughout the day. Water is not part of the reimbursable meal. You cannot serve water in place of milk, but you can serve it alongside of milk. But you can also serve water at snack. If say you do chips and salsa, or maybe you do a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at snack, you can serve water instead because you already served your 2 components. So we talked about the meal patterns and how much needs to be served. We talked about each component, but now let's go into how you credit. How do you know what you can and cannot serve? Like, how do you know if it's a meat? How do you know if it's a grain? How do you know if it's a vegetable? How do you know if it's a meat alternate? I'm going to show you with the crediting information. So we're going to go through these two books. One is called the Cacfp Crediting Handbook, which is my absolute favorite book. We're going to make this available to schools, even though it says Cacfp on it, but we're going to put some notes with it. I tried changing the book, but we just didn't think USDA would be happy with that. But we're going to make this available to schools because a lot of the things in here, yes and no, are for schools. Like, it just tells you what you can and cannot serve. But we're first going to go through is the food buying guide. People do not realize how important these two books are. Like, this should be your Bible when you're in the kitchen. There are versions of the food buying guide. We have an interactive version, we have an app, and we have the PDF. Now, I will tell you, I need to put it in the handouts, but if you go out to Meal Patterns, to the resource library, we have something that says food buying guide, and it takes you, it's the link to the PDFs, because the PDF that I have here, if you have one at your center, and if you're new, we're going to give you a food buying guide, but these food buying guides have been printed out for 5 years. They're already old. There has been some changes to this. So if you go to the link out there, you can just even type in USDA food buying guide. It will send you to the interactive one. It will also say PDF, and if you can click on the PDF version, it will look like this, but it will be the latest one. So I really don't like people, if they're like, mail me one, I'm like, this is old. This actually, some of the stuff in here I know has been updated. Example of popcorn. You used to not be able to serve popcorn, but now you can. It has switched over. So I always want people to use the latest one on the food buying guide. Now, why is this food buying guide so important? Well, anything, if you can find it in here, you can serve it on Cacfp. It tells you how many servings you get from quantity of food. It also will tell you, like, if I cook something raw, how much I will get when I cook it. And it also lets you know how much to buy. So the biggest thing that I can tell you about this book is that if it states exactly, like if you buy something on the label, and on that label, we have a column in here that says food is purchased. If that label matches that food is purchased column exactly, then it can be served. If it does not, then you have to have either a CN label or a product formulation statement. If you don't have that, then you cannot serve the product. So this book is very, very important about what you can and cannot serve. And again, I do an hour training on this, and we started doing it. I was doing it every 3 months. Now I'm doing it every other month. So if you see an infant training, it's going to be the opposite month of an infant training. Now, the sections for the food buying guide, we have the meat alternate section, the vegetable, the fruit, the grain, the milk, and we have an other section. Now, what I have to remind people is this other section, we don't have a component called other. We don't have one. So if you find something in other, it doesn't meet requirements. It will tell you in here it doesn't. Talking with some people that have been in schools for a long time, they will tell you they use the other because it lets them know how much to buy. So for instance, cream cheeses and other, and maybe they're going to serve 500 2 tablespoons of, that's how much they need is 500 2 tablespoons of cream cheese, and it lets them know how to buy it. But it's in the other section. If you find it in the meat alternate section, then that's what it is. For instance, you'll find beans in the meat alternate section, and you'll find beans in the vegetable section. So that means if it's in the vegetable section, you can serve it as a vegetable. If you find it in the meat, you can serve it as a meat. If you find it in the other section, it's just an other. We don't have an other component, so it's just an extra. So let me show you. This is the hard copy of the manual of this book. This is what I want to show you. So this is column 1, the food is purchased column. And the food is purchased column has ground, like right here, it has ground beef 80-20, has ground beef 85-15, ground beef 90-10. If it's on the label says 80-20, then you can serve it. So right here, we're going to look at the ground beef 80-20. And so what next is how do you purchase it? So it's by pound. Well, I'm not for sure if you knew this, but everything that's a pound, it's 16 ounces. I don't care what it is. If it's bread, 16 ounces equal a pound. If it says 1 pound of bread, it's 16 ounces. Okay, 16 ounces always equals 1 pound, always. So what this tells me is if I buy hamburger meat and I buy it by the pound, which is 16 ounces, when I cook it, because it says cooked lean meat, when I cook it, it's going to shrink down to 11.8 ounces. because it takes in consideration the fat that's in there. As you can see here, we have the ground beef that's 80-20, and when you cook it, you get 11.81 ounces of meat. If you have 85-15 and you cook it a pound, 1 ounces will give you 12 ounces of meat. The less fat that's in it, the more meat it will give you. That's why this book is so important, because what if you're a daycare center? I'll come in talking about how we fill out the paperwork in a little bit, but you're as a daycare center, maybe you have 11 1 to 2-year-olds. So you know that you need to cook 1 pound of meat to feed those 11 kids. So it's very important to know when you cook something, how it shrinks down. Now this column 5 right here is maybe from your center, maybe you're a center of 25, your capacity. But when you did the calculating, you know that you need 100 servings of meat, 100 1-ounce servings of meat. Well, this tells me right here that if I need 100 servings of 80-20 ground beef of 1 ounces, then I need to cook 8.5 pounds. And then this right here column is just additional information. So again, this is the PDF version. And the PDF version is really nice. I know this book is old, but it is important to look at it. I will tell you, I used in the field, I used my app the most because I don't have to lug this around. And then I would use this, but I would pull it up online because it does become significant. Again, if it's in here, you can serve it. And there's sometimes that I know there's a food item in here, but I can't find it. Like the other day I typed in fish and it did not pull up fish because they have a seafood section in here. So sometimes it's based on how they say it, it's worded different. So sometimes I have to go through the whole section to find what I'm looking for. The other section, this is the fruits, vegetable, and there's a couple of things I want to point out in the fruit and vegetable sections, is everything on the PDF version is all going to say 1/4 cups, 1/4 cup, 1/4 cup, 1/4 cup, the whole way down. The reason why is because 1/4 cup was the most common denominator. We do not have an 1/8 of a cup, but we have an 1/8 of a cup, a 1/4 of a cup, 1/2 a cup, 3/4 of a cup, and 1 cup. So they did it to the lowest common denominator at the time. Now, I will say that on the online version and the PDF, or the online version and the app, there are certain things that are commonly used that will allow you to change this. So like right here on, this is whole green beans in a can. So whole green beans in a can, if I bought a number 10 can of whole green beans, this is telling me that out of this number 10 can, I will get 39.5 1/4 cups heated. So if I change this, it allowed me to change it to 1/2 a cup, then this number would go in half. So again, this is why this is so important, this manual. So when we come out to do a review, this is the book that we go by to make sure you served enough. We use this. Now, say when you serve green beans, I'm going to assume that you serve them heated. So I'm going to go by and say they're whole green beans, not cut are down here, Italian style, they're all down here, but this is the whole green bean. So I'm going to use this right here, and I'm going to assume that you've heated it up. But maybe you made a 3-bean salad, and in that 3-bean salad, you don't heat it up. It's refrigerated. So you can use this one down here. These are both number 10 cans. But why? There's 2 number 10 cans here. One says 39.5 and one says 52.2. It's the same size can. The reason for the difference is because the top one has been heated and the bottom one has not. Because again, when you heat things, it shrinks it down. So that's why it is very important that you go by this book. Do not go by the back of the can, because the count on the can will just tell you how many servings you can get out of there. It doesn't take into account if it shrinks because of you heating it. So what they did with USDA, from what I was told, is say with the whole green beans, what they did is they took 10 different brands, Del Monte, Dole, Cisco brand. They took 10 number 10 cans, they scooped them all out and then did an average. So just because your number 10 can, and you may, like just an example of if on these green beans, one may give you 39.5 1/4 cups heated. One may give you 43 1/4 cups. One may give you 35. But we use this as an average, and that way it's safe across the board. And this is what we do suggest that you use when you are serving. So this one right here, the look of it is a little bit different. This is the online version. So if I pull up, and this is what I did was with lunch meat, we're talking about ham. It says mild cured. Again, it has component over on this side. It has a category, and then it has the food is purchased. Again, it's just in a different location and it looks a little bit different. And I pulled up ham. We're going to talk about lunch meat, and I'm looking at hams right here. And there's like 2 pages full of hams. So I'm going to curious if, and this is something to be cautious of, is your deli meats that you buy for sandwiches. So I had someone that sent me this and said, would this work? And I said, well, what in the food buying guide do you think it goes with? Because I'm going to ask you that if you ask me. If you ask me, does this work? I'm going to need you to tell me where in the food buying guide did you find it? Because I want you to learn how to use this book. So the person sent me this and said, I think it's this one right here, pork, mild cured, fully cooked, chilled or frozen ham with natural juices, boiled without bone. So I looked at the front and the back. I'm just showing you the front. And does this product meet those requirements? And the answer is no, it does not. And the reason being is even on the back on the label, it does say ham with natural juices, but I saw nowhere, I think it said pork in the ingredient list. Nowhere did it say mild cured. It may have said fully cooked on the back, but I didn't see that. And then again, the chilled or frozen. So it has to state what it says in here. If it does not state this, you cannot serve it. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you when it comes to ham and turkey. We did a training with DHS to kind of let them know about our meal patterns, and I added this slide, and I really thought it was very helpful, so I wanted to add it to the slides here. When you go, if you go to go purchase a ham, if you go to the pre-sliced ham section over by the cheeses and stuff, we have not found any that work that meet these requirements. You may find one in the back in the deli section, the kind that you do have to have shaved, that you have to have sliced yourself. But again, we have to have a copy of that label, and you have to show us what ham meats in the food buying guide. Turkey, there is no turkey in here. Now I will say, because I have some on here, there is a turkey roast in here. Turkey roast comes from commodities. If it's a turkey roast that you got from commodities, anything you get from commodities, you can serve. Daycares do not have access to commodities, only our school districts. So the only turkey that you can cook is if you take a turkey, bake it, and slice it yourself for sandwiches, a whole turkey. You can if you do have a product formulation statement, but I will tell you, I'll talk about product formulation statements, but I've been around for a while, and I've seen a lot of product formulation statements. And I will tell you right now, about 25 to 50% of the product formulation statements are the only ones that work. Even from a credible company, even like I'll say, like Tyson or Kellogg's or General Mills. I've seen like General Mills can send me 4 product formulation statements and maybe one of them will work. One of it is creditable. So just because you have a product formulation statement, I would definitely have your, make sure your program specialist takes a look at it to make sure that it meets. Now, this is for people that shop at the grocery store. If you buy your stuff from a vendor, you'll be able to get like CN labeled stuff. Now, I will tell you, people ask, well, what can I search of? Now, check your beef bologna, but a lot of times your beef bologna will work as long as the first ingredient is beef and it's not mechanically separated. Now, don't look at turkey bologna, because if you look at the ingredients, the first ingredient will say mechanically separated. If you make your homemade pimento cheese, homemade tuna, chicken, egg salad, you can do grilled cheese, but make sure you're using the correct cheese. There is a thing called turkey ham. And again, right here, this is the food buying guide. Turkey ham works. I've seen a turkey ham from Jennie-O. A lot of people say that they have found it in their Walmart, back at the section that you have to have shaved, but you can serve turkey ham without a CN label. Again, because turkey ham is in here. So if you buy turkey ham, it can say fully cooked, chilled, or frozen, or it can say 15% added ingredients. But if you find a turkey ham, you can serve it, and it's good. What people don't understand with this book is everything in here has what we call a standard of identity. So what happened is USDA has a recipe for turkey ham. Like, this is how much turkey has to be in here. This is how much ham. This is the type of ham. This is how much water can be injected. This is, and if they make it by that recipe, then they can call it turkey ham. If they change anything, then they can't call it that. That's why hams, we have such an issue. There are hams in here that are credible and they meet a recipe. The problem is with a lot of hams, especially the ones that they slice, one can be filled with 15% saline water. Some can be injected with 20% water. Some can be 5% water. It's because they did not choose to follow a recipe by USDA. So that recipe, if they follow that recipe, then they can put it on the label. But if it doesn't, like a turkey ham, if they don't make it the way USDA said that turkey ham, then they cannot call it turkey ham. If they change one thing, it can't be called turkey ham. So that's just my suggestion. These are some helpful hints when it comes to fruits and vegetables. Some of this stuff you'll find in this crediting handbook right here. This is the Cliff Notes versions to the food buying guide, which I love, and I'm going to show you some components of this. But an example is if you do serve raw leafy greens, you have to serve 1 cup of that to equal a half a cup. Now, if you serve dried fruit, if you serve, say, 1/4 of a cup of dried fruit, it will equal more because say if you were to reconstitute it, it would plump up. So the raisins would be this big and they'd plump up to this big. Now let's talk about the crediting handbook. Again, I have a couple of schools on here. This is only for CACFP. They do not have a school one, but we love, love, love this. We're going to make it available to schools. I'm going to start teaching a little bit on this, but we're going to make just a notes page, like a cover page of what does not. They talk about NSLP a little bit in here, but like the grains, like there's things that they can't serve at CACFP because of sugar, but you can. Same thing with yogurt. You don't have requirements for yogurt, so you can serve it. But this is a great Cliff Notes. This is like tells you if it's creditable or not, and then it will tell you where to go in the food buying guide. Here's an example about like bologna. It tells you if it's creditable, if it's free of byproduct cereals or extenders, and it will tell you what those are. Can you serve Canadian bacon or mild cured bacon or pork? And it says yes, and then it will tell you right here where to go into the food buying guide. It's a great, great book. This has a lot of neat hints in it, and I'm going to show you some here. This all comes from the crediting handbook. So say you want to do a cheese, like an imitation cheese or cheese product. Again, this comes straight from the crediting handbook, and no, these are not allowed. A lot of these types of cheeses, they melt very well or they're individually wrapped. So just be cautious. It can say processed cheese, that's real cheese, but if it says cheese product or imitation cheese, it's not allowed. We see these a lot. These are chips. Again, this would be yes, yes, maybe a no. Potato chips and veggie straws, potato chips and other vegetable chips that are fried. No, you cannot serve them. And it does say in here because there's a different variation in ingredients, so it's not creditable. So if you're serving these items to go towards your reimbursable meal, you cannot. If you want to serve chips as part of the reimbursable meal, you can do it as a grain, and it's anything that starts with a corn, flour, or cornmeal. Those are the only 2 things. So like your Doritos, Cheetos, Fritos, Sun Chips, and tortilla chips. This is also in this section, in this book, in the fruit section. It gives you this information. Now the oranges are listed a little bit more towards the bottom. But again, if you serve an average size banana and an average size orange, it equals a half a cup of fruit. There's just a lot of really good helpful hints in here. I tell everybody, start with this book and then work your way into the food buying guide, because this book will at least let you know if you can serve it or not. And then if it says no or maybe, what you need. If it says yes, then it will show you where to go into the food buying guide, which I think is very helpful because the food buying guide does tend to be very intimidating. So the reason in the food buying guide training, it's probably going to go a little bit longer because we didn't have anything in here about crediting handbook, because the food buying guide training does go for everybody. And this is only for CACFP. But we really like this book a lot. We think it's very helpful for new staff. So we're going to make this available to our schools. We're going to put this out in other documents. We are going to let them know it is for CACFP, not for them. But the difference is, like I said, with the grain, it says in here what you cannot serve because it's dessert, which they can serve it at schools. But it's such a good book. I tried changing some stuff, but we thought that USDA would have a problem with that. So we're going to go back to the original book and just put like what you can and can't do. Pre-made mixed dishes, some example of that. This is stuff that you buy, like pizza, burritos, chicken nuggets, things that have 2 components together, especially things that are breaded. Any item that contains 2 or more components when you purchase it. Again, if it's in the manual, if it's in the food buying guide, you can serve it. If it's not, you have to have a see and label or product formulation statement. Now, I did a food buying guide training once, and I had someone say this, and it is true. There are fish sticks in here. There is a fish stick in here that you can serve. However, the fish stick in here says it can't come from minced meat. It has to contain so much fish. So it has to, again, on the label, meet that requirement. And if it doesn't, then you have to get a CN label or a product formulation statement. Now, like I said, I have some schools on here. You guys get commodities. Anything you get from commodities, you can use. But if it is something that is pre-made that has 2 or more components, you do need to print out the information chart, the information sheet to let you know how to serve it and for us to know how to credit it. So what is a CN label or product formulation statement? A CN label, one, it must be current. I'm going to show you what some look like. The 6-digit CN number, it needs to be listed on the menu of serve forms. A product formulation statement. So a CN label comes from USDA. A company sends their product to USDA. They analyze it, say, yes, this is what it is. You can put this label on your package. If the product has a CN label, it's going to be on the package. A product formulation statement is something that comes from the manufacturer. So if I'm Tyson, Kellogg's, General Mills, Frito-Lay, I'm just trying to think of companies, large companies, if it has to come from that company that makes it. And they have to use the food buying guide to tell you what it is. And that's what gets a lot of them in trouble, is because they're not using products out of the food buying guide. Now, CN labels do have an expiration date, and you can go to this website just to make sure that the CN labels that you're using are still valid. I'm going to show you how you can tell what year it came across, but really, I think they have a 5-year expiration date. No, I mean, right before I came out of the field, I saw a CN label from 1999, and we're talking, I came out of the field 3 years ago, so that definitely didn't work. Anything before 2007 definitely doesn't work. We have a memo on that, but, and that's even been how many years? It's been a long time. This is the maker's mark. From what I understand, you cannot find CN label products anymore at Sam's. But this is the CN label from that. Again, this is the 6-digit number right here that we need you to put on your menu as serve form. This tells you how to serve it. That's the significance of it. Because if you don't know this, how do you know how much to serve? So like, for instance, if you had this chicken nugget, 5 nuggets, whole grain breaded chicken breast, provide 2 ounce equivalent meat alternate and 1 ounce equivalent of grain. Now, again, when we look at your CN labels and stuff like that, we're going to also kind of look at your invoices and stuff and your receipts to make sure it is the same one. No, this is correct. A product formulation statement does not automatically give you the green light. Only a child nutrition label, this CN label, is the only thing that gives you the absolute green light. I would always tell anybody before you serve something to give that product formulation statement to your program specialist and send it to them. And they may even send it to us to look at, because we look at them quite a bit, to make sure that it does meet. Like I said, I've gotten like 5 from Tyson in one day, and like 1 worked out of Tyson. Because half the time they didn't use something. Like one time, like, you have to tell us what the breading is, and it said breaded. Well, is your breading made out of cornmeal? Is it made out of flour? It's just, we've seen a lot of bad ones. So a product formulation statement, as like in here, it is actually approved by you. The CN label is approved by USDA. This CN label came from a vendor. So like right here in this corner, this is the product number to order. This is not the CN number. The CN number is inside the box. That's what we need. And the reason why is because, let's say you did chicken nuggets and you use a vendor. So you bought these chicken nuggets. Well, they discontinued it, so they don't make it anymore. So you bought a different chicken nugget, and the kids don't like that chicken nugget. So you bought another chicken nugget, and the kids do like it. So in 1 year, you served 3 chicken nuggets. We have to know which CN label goes with which meal that you served. So that's why you need to write down this number, so we make sure we're looking at the correct CN number. And these are changing. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, from what I've been told, that it is hard to find CN label products, even on the school side, from what I understand. And what I've also been told, because companies pay a lot of money to put the CN label on their product. And from what I've also been told, a lot of companies are not going to go back to doing CN labeled products. So I don't know. That's what I've heard. We'll see what happens, but who knows when COVID's going to be over, because apparently we're going, round 3 again. So I don't know what's going to happen. Again, with CN labels, it has to be on the product. If it's not on the product, then it's not a CN label. This happens quite a bit. Companies, what they'll do is for marketing purposes, they'll have two bags that look the exact same. One may be a little bit higher priced and one will have a CN label on it, but the other one won't. If they change the formulation one tiny bit, they have to get a new CN label. And they may just not want to get a new CN label, so they just pull it, but the packaging still looks the same. So if you're buying a product that has a CN label, make sure that CN label is still on there every time that you buy it, because if it does not, that means you're buying a product that does not have a CN label. When it does come to CN labels, we will take the original, we will take a photocopy or a photograph as long as we can read it. And again, we a lot of times we look at your invoice, especially if it's a watermark CN label, meaning it came from your vendor. We will look at your receipts to make sure that you bought the correct one. And I've seen it before, honestly. So that CN label that I just showed you, the one on the red box, that was given to me from a daycare center I did a review on. But when I looked at her receipts, that's not the chicken nugget she bought. She bought a different one. So that clearly was not her CN label. It came from somebody else. We noticed that. We pick up on things like that. So that's Member's Mark, and they were buying Fast Fixin'. So it's not the same brand. Product formulation statements, again, it's from the manufacturer. It has to be on company letterhead. It has to provide crediting information in here. They have to have a crediting statement and be signed and dated by a legal authorized rep. There is a form in here that you can check to make sure it's valid. But again, it's like a 4-page thing that you circle yes. If it says like, I think yes on everything, then you can serve it. But I would just send it to your specialist and have them look at it and give you the green light. Because if they don't know, they'll send it to us. And it just protects you. So again, what people are starting to not think about, they don't think outside the box. So it is hard to find CN labeled products right now. And it's going to continue to be that way. So maybe instead of thinking about buying things with a CN label, is making things. And if you make things, then you don't have to have a CN label because you can tell us how much you use. So maybe instead of doing a corn dog, you make pigs in a blanket. Maybe instead of buying a bean burrito, you can make your own and you just get tortilla, refried beans, and cheese. I had a center that did do this. This is actually a real scenario that happened. Showed up to a center, no CN label. She made her own. And then when I came back again, I happened to be there on Bean Burrito Day. And she said the kids loved it so much. She was actually making her own beans. And she said it was cheaper and the kids liked it way better. You can make your own chicken nuggets. You can take chicken tenders, you can take chicken breast, cut it all up, bread it and bake it. And if you bread it, the breading won't count, but the chicken will. And if you make your own pizza, you can use biscuit dough, you can use bagels, you can buy the pre-made crust. I had one center that their kids really liked pizza on hamburger buns. And then pizza sticks, you can buy breadsticks, put cheese on it, maybe even some pepperoni, which pepperoni is an extra, but it's an ingredient. It just makes it taste better. And then marinara sauce. Kids love it. You just make it yourself. Just buy breadsticks, throw some cheese on there, bake it, serve it with marinara. You got pizza sticks. So USDA also has some standardized recipes. These recipes are great. I would definitely go out there. We still, I think, give out the recipe cards, but they keep on updating things, especially on things that you can and cannot serve. Like in the recipe cards, like you can't serve scones anymore. I don't know anybody who really cooked the scones, but it has cookie recipes. You can't really do that. But there's a lot of really good recipes. CACFP and school, they're the same recipes a lot of times. It's just the quantity size, the yield size is much higher with school. So a lot of you may want that instead. But there's like a black bean and corn salsa out there that is really good. Teachers and kids, so it's a hit or miss with kids. Kids either love it or hate it. But there's a lot of really good recipes. It also tells you how to serve it. So say there's a recipe for chicken and noodles. And it will tell you like 1 cup serving will give you like 2 ounces of meat alternate and 1 ounce of grain. So follow the recipe, especially the fruit or the vegetable, the grain and the meat, but you can play with the spices. But there's a lot of really good recipes out there. I really highly suggest that you do that. Labels, again, we have to have labels to make sure that these items are in compliance. If you don't have labels, then we will take these back. So we have to have a label for everything that you serve that's whole grain. Any product formulation statement or CN labels that you're using. breakfast cereals, yogurt, or any lunch meat that you're using based on the food buying guide. Now, like schools have been having to keep labels of every single thing that they use for 20 years. They've been having to keep labels. So if a school can keep labels and they serve 1,000 kids, trust me, you guys can just throw them in a box or throw them in a plastic bag and we will look at them. And then like every year I would just get new ones. But like, for instance, say you buy the same bread every time, you don't change breads, you buy the same bread, it's whole wheat. You just have to take a picture of it or just save one bread bag. You don't have to save every single bread bag that you use. You only have to save certain ones. But you have to also tell us what you on your menu assert form, like this time it's Sara Lee, maybe this time it's Wonder. You have to at least tell us which label that we do need to look at. So these are just some times when we will take meals back. Is if you don't serve a whole grain per day, we'll take a meals back. If you serve juice more than once a day, or if you serve juice to an infant without a doctor's note, if you serve a lunch meat that does not meet requirements, if you serve a grain-based dessert, if you don't serve enough food, if you serve something but it's not in here and you don't have a CN label or product formulation statement, if you don't have labels, and again, if your quantities or components are not listed, sometimes you served it, but you just forgot to write it down, and we have to have that information. Or if you guys do contracting, if you contract your meals and you don't keep your meal delivery receipt. Okay, so next let's talk about menu as served and inventory. So if you are a daycare center, and you do at risk, you do have to keep separate documents. Check the appropriate box for what you're doing. And again, for at-risk meals, you can only do it during the school calendar year. We just have to make sure people understand that. You have to have separate menu as served forms. So we're going to talk about the menu as served forms and what all needs to be listed on there. And again, this is, we talk about this when I walk through it, but you have to make sure when you're writing things down, it can be things that are, say, listed here in the food buying guide. But my biggest suggestion to you is to write it down like a recipe. And I'll explain that when I show you the menu assert form. I know I have some schools on here, and I think I talk about it in here. I'm not quite sure. We've had Christmas. It's been crazy. But schools, you can use the menu assert form, or you can use your production record. A lot of you are going to use the production record, which is fine. It gives us way more information. You do not have to use the menu assert form if you're a school district and you're doing CACFP. But these are a little bit of do's and don'ts when you are writing down items. Like, make sure you have to tell us how much you served. If you don't tell us, we don't know if you served enough. Did you serve 63 1-ounce slices of bread, or 63 ounces, or 4 pounds of bread? Do not put 63 slices of bread. Was your bread 1-ounce slices? Was your bread 0.9-ounce slices? We have to know. Don't write 35 items. Say put 35 egg rolls and then give us the CN number. Now, this one's a kind of a catch thing. You can put that you serve 7 pounds of bananas. If you have a scale at your center and you weighed it and it said 7 pounds, you can put that on your menu assert form. But I've been to some centers and they bought bananas 3 days ago, don't have the receipt, and said that they served 7 pounds. I'm like, well, how did you know that? Can you show me your scale? And they're like, well, I don't have one. So how did you know you served 7 pounds of bananas? If you don't have a scale, remember, you can use, we know that one average size banana equals a half of a cup. So you can just tell us that you served 10 bananas. Something else that you can do is you can tell us that you served 1.5 16-ounce boxes, or that you served 24 ounces of wheat thins. We see this a lot, that they will just write 233 crackers or 1 box. Those don't tell us anything. How much did each cracker weigh? You can tell us 233 crackers, but how much did each cracker weigh? 1 box. Did you buy the box at Dollar Tree? Did you buy the box at Walmart? Or did you buy the box at Sam's? So if you bought the box at Dollar Tree, it was probably an 8-ounce box. If you bought it at Walmart, it may have been a 16-ounce box. And if you bought it from Sam's, it may be a 32-ounce box. So that's why you can't just say 1 box. You have to tell us the size of the box. We have to know quantity. So this right here is an example. And again, write it like a recipe, because this is, let me tell you, there's so many, we will do the math on our end, but this is why it's super important to do that. here's an example with spaghetti. So on this example, they had 15 kids, they're 3 to 5 year olds, and they served 2 pounds. So if you see a hashtag, it's pounds. We don't use hashtag, we use it as a pound sign or a number sign. So they served 2 pounds of ground beef, 80-20. They cooked 1 pound of spaghetti noodles. They opened up 2 15-ounce cans of green beans and 2 15-ounce cans of tomato sauce, which they used for the spaghetti. They used 2 15-ounce cans of peaches, and they served 3/4 gallon of milk. Now, the gallons of milk, if you want to do it by ounces, you can definitely do it by ounces. That's fine. The reason why this is so important, you write it as a recipe, is because let's say everybody's sick. I'm a teacher. I'm like, hey, listen, I'll cook lunch today because, everybody's sick. I'll come in and cook lunch. Well, say that you have 13 kids that are 3 to 5 years old. Well, if you write this down and put like you serve 1.5 ounces of meat, someone coming in that doesn't know anything about child nutrition is going to go, okay, 15 times 1.5 ounces of meat that they need 22.5 ounces. And they're going to go, okay, there's 16 ounces in a pound. So I need 1.5 pounds. They're not going to do the math right because they don't know that it shrinks whenever you cook ground beef. Make it like a recipe. So when someone comes in, they know how much to open up, because they're not going to know. Like if you said that you served spaghetti noodles, you served 15 half-ounce equivalent servings. They're not going to be, they're like, what is that? What does that mean? If you write it like a recipe, someone can come in and they can just start cooking. You're like, okay, today we have 13 kids. It's about the same number. They're looking at old menu of serve forms. So like, okay, so today I can cook this, and I need 2 pounds of ground beef to cook it. I need 1 pound of spaghetti noodles. They know how much to open up. So when you are writing your menus, try to write it in a recipe type form. So someone else, if they have no affiliation with child nutrition, they know how to come in and cook it. That's my biggest thing that I can tell you. And you have to write quantities. So like right here, I know this says 1 pound, one pound box of goldfish. You can literally put 1 pound box of goldfish. That's fine. But we have to know how much you served. So again, and you have to indicate to us which meal has the whole grain in it. We have to look to see. But again, try to make sure you write it like a recipe. That's the best thing that I can tell you to do. It just makes it easier if someone is coming in behind you to know how much to prepare. Now, some of you might have a menu as serve form that it does a little bit of pre-filling out. Like we've had some systems that we've seen, like when you tell us how many kids that you have, they'll be like, oh, you need 2.3456 pounds of hamburger meat today. Well, we call that more of a calculating servings, but that's not, you have to still write in how much you serve. Just because it tells you need 2.3456 pounds of hamburger meat, did you really serve 2.3456 pounds of hamburger meat, or did you serve 2.5 pounds of hamburger meat, or did you serve 3 pounds of hamburger meat, or does your system know that you have to cook it down? So just make sure that you still handwrite in there, even if your system tells you how much to serve. Now, we have something called calculating servings form that's very, very helpful. This is in the manual, but it's also in the interactive forms, which I would really tell you to use. This is an example. This is an example of the one in the manual. Now, the one in the interactive forms is all on one page. So the first column has breakfast, the second column has lunch, and the third has snacks. So you can do it all in one screenshot. But what you do is you tell us how many 1 to 2 year olds you have, how many 3 to 5 year olds, and how many 6 year olds. We also have this for adults. And if you don't see it out there for adults, let me know, and I will definitely make sure that I create that. But I'm pretty sure it's out there. If this is not out, if there's not one, let me know. I will create it. Because sometimes I get confused if we have it for adults or not. But all you do is you tell us the ages, and this is for breakfast. So for breakfast, you plug in the ages, and then it does the math for you. So this tells us for this amount of kids that you need 58 ounces of milk. Well, we do know that 1 gallon of milk is 128 ounces, and that there's 64 ounces in a half gallon. So right here, they know that they have to open a half gallon. Well, they didn't serve, they served a fruit or vegetable. And so they said they needed 17 1/4 cups. And that's another reason why it's also done in 1/4 cups, is because if, say, for breakfast, which I've been to a school that has done green beans with pancakes before, and it was a huge hit, it's another story for another time, but they did green beans. So those whole can of green beans that we looked at, so this would let me know that I need 17 1/4 cups. I can go out to the food buying guide because the food buying guide, everything's in 1/4 cups, and I would know how much to open up. So in this case, if we did green beans heated, we know that there was 39.5 1/4 cups in a number 10 can of whole green beans. I would know I would need a half a number 10 can. And then down here, I did change this. This now says total ounce servings. I did update this. I know I corrected it here. I forgot to here, but this will tell us like right here that you would need, say, maybe 12 ounces. So that way, if you're serving, say, I know this is for breakfast, but maybe you can serve crackers for breakfast. So say you're serving crackers and it says that you need 12 ounces and you have a box of 16-ounce crackers, you can just serve the whole box of 16-ounce crackers. So it's really, really helpful. Again, it's in the interactive. If you go down if you go into the resource library, go all the way down under worksheets, it's under calculating servings. So I'm going to go out there after this and check to make sure the adult version is out there. It should be, but again, if it's not, I will create one very quickly and have it out there. It's a great tool. If you have a new cook, I had a center that before this was interactive, when she had to do it by hand from the one in the manual, I had a daycare that when she had a new cook, she made them do this for about a month until she felt that they knew what they were doing and attach it to the product for the menu as serve form. So it's a really, really good tool to have. Inventory, this is so you are aware, it is now required. It's been required since October. This is for all, I'm going to show you an example, but it's for all unopened items on hand. It's for food and milk. You don't have to do it for your other things. If food and milk receipts should reflect what you were purchasing. If you use a different inventory system, contact your program specialist. If you're a school district for at risk, you can do what you've already been doing for schools. You don't have to do another system. You can do what you've already been doing because it's always been required for schools to do an inventory. This is what our inventory does look like. The sheet, it's a front and back. It has meat alternate, grain, bread, fruit, and vegetable. Again, it's on all unopened items, so that way you're not having to write everything down. You may want to write everything down, but that's more of a perpetual inventory where this is just for unopened products. On the back side, we have a column for milk formula and infant food. And then we have a column for condiments and extra food items. So it's like maybe you do serve those donuts. And then any supplies, but it is not required to fill it out for the condiments or the supplies. It's only required for food. But we have it on there just in case. So just quickly, we'll talk about meal service. Meal service, we have two types. There's pre-plating and straight serve or family style. Now, right now, due to COVID, family style has been halted. If you do want to do family style, you have to reach out to your health department to find out if they're going to allow it. So straight serve is you have to have all components on the plate in the full serving size as required. What family style is all the serving sizes are in the bowl, and the kids or the the participants in the daycare, they serve themselves. And that's why right now it really hasn't been allowed because of all the kids touching the spoons and stuff. So at the beginning of August, USDA or not USDA, I forget who's in charge of Head Starts, but they did want them all to go back to family style. When I did training about a month or two ago, Head Start halted that again. So they are not allowing for family style. Like I said, if you want to do it, you are definitely going to have to reach out to your health department because we're not going to sign off on that. It's going to have to be your health department that says it's okay. Offer versus serve. So this is only for my adult daycares, and this is only for schools that do at risk. If you do at risk, but you are not a school, you are not allowed to do offer versus serve. Offer versus serve is always allowed at schools, so that's why they let them do it for at risk. So offer versus serve is allowed for breakfast or lunch, but if you do a snack, it's not allowed for snack. What offer versus serve is, and here's breakfast, but to be honest, if you're doing at risk, you're not going to do a breakfast. But if you're doing offer versus serve at breakfast, you have to offer 4 food items. which a lot of you do. So like, for instance, let's say you do milk, you do, let's say applesauce, and then for the grain, let's say you have cereal and toast. So you have to offer 4 items and they're allowed to decline 1. So they can decline 1 item at breakfast, but you have to offer 4, even though there's 3 required components. If you do offer versus serve, you have to give them 1 more item. It can be any item you want. Maybe you decide to do eggs, toast, milk, applesauce. They can decline any of the 4. They can decline any of it. And a lot of times in my adult daycares, it's going to be the milk. If you do milk, they want coffee and they don't want milk. They don't like milk. I get it. When I'm 65 years old, which I do like milk, but when I'm 65, I probably want coffee over milk too. At lunch or supper, you can do offer versus serve. You have to give them all 5 components are offered to them. But they only have to take 3 items. And again, a lot of times milk is optional for supper for adults. For adults only. Milk is optional for supper for adults. I should put that on there to make sure my at-risk don't do that. But so as long as they have 3 items on their plate, they are fine. So let's say you do spaghetti. So you do spaghetti with a meat sauce. That's 2 items. Maybe you do a breadstick with that. You do green beans, peaches, and then milk. The pasta and the bread are both a grain. They have to have 3 components, not food items. So let's just say that they take the spaghetti. So if they take spaghetti, they get that in the meat sauce. So that's 2. And then they want the roll, that's fine. But again, that's also a grain and you already have your grain, but they have to either take the fruit, vegetable, or milk for offer versus serve. And again, that's under AD 129. That's for my adult daycares. So this is just some additional information. So you can use any form in any of our manuals, except if you're family daycare home. You really need, if you want to use a family daycare home for daycare side, you really can't, because it doesn't give enough information, but you can use school stuff for CACFP and stuff like that. If you have a form that is not in any of our manuals or that is not in the interactive, you have to get approval from your program specialist. A lot of you have forms that are way better than ours, but we've had some instances where they were not, and we had to take meals back. So now we want to approve them all. And like I said, if you're a school and you're using your school forms for CACFP, that's fine. It's in a manual that you do use, so it's fine. So also I talked to you about trainings. We do a lot of live trainings. Again, they're on the training calendar. We update that. We usually are about 2 months out. This week we should be having our March stuff. I was just planning our March trainings this week. We also have OSDE Connect, or it used to be OK Edge. Those are our self-paced trainings. This training will be out there. All of them will be out there. So they can do the self-paced training, and then afterwards they will get credit. Now, if you go to the resource library under trainings and workshops, it will show you in the instructions that says OSDE Connect instructions. At the top, it lists all the topics that we have currently going that you can go out there and look for. And then it's a step-by-step. We have additional trainings. We have Team Nutrition, which is a webinar. We have Institute of Child Nutrition, which they do some live, but a lot of it is self-paced over any topic you can imagine. For any child nutrition program you can imagine. Something that is very new as of like a month ago is we now have Cooking for Kids on our CACFP side. We've been doing it for school since 2012. We have a contract and an agreement with OSU OKC. So what they do is they're creating recipes. They're making stuff of food that you would buy in a grocery store, time management, food safety, and how to build new recipes. So it's a really good thing. These are all, they'll do like knife skills. These are all in person. So you have to register online for these trainings to get a spot. I understand with COVID, but they're going from now up until August. This flyer was not mailed out, but it was emailed out about a month ago. This flyer is also located in the resource library under trainings and workshops. It's great. I highly suggest if you can go. I think it'll be very, very worth it for your cooks. And that is it. We do have, again, all of our originals, all of our blanks in our manuals, and these are all the manuals that we have, or even the resource library under worksheets or under center forms. We have a bunch of them. I am done with today's training. Thank you guys so much for coming today. Good to see where I'm at on my time. I'm going to be sticking around for questions. So if you have anything, let me know.